You don't wake up in Sparta. You surface, like a man pulled out of cold water, suddenly conscious, already aware of the stone beneath you, the chill in the air, the silence that isn't really silence, because somewhere outside, the city is already moving. It's 480 BC. You are 23 years old. You have been training for this life since you were 7. And in a few months, on a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae, you and 300 others will make a decision that the entire Western world is still talking about. But right now, in the gray light before dawn, none of that exists yet. Right now, there is only the barracks, the secession, the mess hall where you sleep, eat, and live alongside the men you will one day die beside. You don't live with your wife. Even if you're married, you sleep here, with your unit, because in Sparta, the bond between soldiers is considered more important than the bond between husband and wife. That is not a metaphor. That is policy. The sleeping mat beneath you is thin. You made it yourself. Spartan law required young men to cut reeds with their bare hands from the river Eurotas without a blade because the resistance built grip strength. A detail so specific it sounds invented. It is not. You are 23 years old. You have been doing this since you were 7 years old. Let that land for a second. Because here is what almost no one fully understands about Spartan warriors. They were not born this way. They were made, systematically, deliberately, over 2 decades of a program so demanding it had its own name, the Agoge. At age 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families and placed into state-controlled training units called Agoge, herds. Not a poetic translation, that was the actual word. You were livestock being shaped into a weapon. The Agoge lasted until age 18, and what happened inside it was not simply military training, it was psychological reconstruction. Boys were deliberately underfed, not by accident, not by poverty, by design. The theory was that hunger sharpens the mind, forces creativity, builds tolerance for discomfort. They were also encouraged to steal food. If caught, they were beaten, not for stealing, but for getting caught. The lesson was not morality, the lesson was competence. One of the most famous stories from the Agoge involves a boy who stole a fox, hid it under his cloak, and stood motionless while the animal tore into his stomach. He died rather than reveal the theft. The story was told for generations, not as a tragedy, but as an example of what Sparta wanted from its men. You rise without a signal. Everyone rises without a signal. In a Spartan barracks, you don't need to be told. You already know. The morning begins with physical training, not because someone ordered it, because it is what the morning is for. Sparta in 480 BC is a city of perhaps 8,000 to 10,000 full citizen warriors called Spartiates. They are outnumbered on their own land by the Helots, enslaved Greeks, mostly Messenians, who work the farms and vastly outnumber their masters. Historians estimate the ratio at somewhere between 7-to-1 and 15-to-1. This is the fact that explains everything about Sparta: the militarization, the communal sleeping, the obsession with physical dominance, the annual ritual, documented by Plutarch, in which Spartan ephors formally declared war on the Helots every year, allowing Spartiates to kill them without legal consequence, a practice so calculated it still disturbs historians today. Sparta was not a warrior culture because it loved war. It was a warrior culture because it was terrified of what would happen if it stopped. Training this morning is a combination of wrestling, running, and weapons drill. The Spartan spear, the dory, is roughly 2.5 meters long.
The short sword, the xiphos, is backup. The large round shield, the aspis, is everything. You train to move with it as an extension of your body, because in a phalanx, the Spartan battle formation, the shield on your left arm protects not just you, but the man to your left. Your shield protects your brother. His shield protects you. Drop your shield, and you have failed him. This is why the most shameful thing a Spartan mother could say to a son going to war was not, "Be careful." It was a phrase recorded by Plutarch, 4 words that became one of the most famous expressions in military history. With it or on it. Return carrying your shield, meaning you fought and survived. Or return on it, meaning you died in battle and your body was carried home. There was no third option that Sparta respected.
By midday, training pauses. The Sicilian, your mess unit, gathers to eat. And here, history delivers one of its best details. The most famous dish in Spartan cuisine was called Melas zomos, black broth, a stew made from pork, blood, salt, and vinegar. Ancient sources record that visitors from other Greek cities who tried it found it nearly inedible. One account from Athenanus quotes a visitor saying he finally understood why Spartans were not afraid to die, because after eating this, death was a relief. The Spartans found this funny. They ate it anyway, every day, not because they had no other options. Spartan citizen soldiers had helots farming their land, producing grain, olives, and wine. The black broth was a choice, a statement. Comfort was something you trained yourself not to need. You eat quickly. You eat with your unit. Conversation at the Sicilian was required to be brief and pointed. The Spartan dialect and the culture around it gave us a word still used today, laconic, from Laconia, the region of Sparta. To speak laconically, to say the most with the fewest possible words. When the Persian king Xerxes sent a message to Sparta demanding they lay down their arms, the Spartan response was a single Greek word, Molon Labe. Come and take them.
The afternoon in Sparta belongs to what the Greeks called skole, leisure, the root of our word school, which tells you something about how the Greeks thought about free time. It was not rest, it was cultivation. Spartans in their off hours practiced music, specifically the aulos, a double flute. They marched into battle to its sound, not for ceremony, because a steady rhythm kept the phalanx moving in locked formation. The music was tactical. They also practiced poetry. The poet Tyrtaeus, who wrote in Sparta around 640 BC, produced war elegies that Spartan soldiers memorized and recited. His work survives in fragments. One of them reads, roughly translated, "It is a beautiful thing for a brave man to die, fallen in the front ranks, fighting for his homeland." Spartan soldiers carried these lines in their heads the way other soldiers carried prayers. Here is the historical contradiction that changes how you see all of this. Sparta had no walls. In a world where every significant Greek city, Athens, Corinth, Thebes, were surrounded by defensive fortifications, Sparta stood open, undefended. When visitors asked why, the answer, recorded by multiple ancient sources, was always the same. The men are the walls. And here is the thing about 480 BC specifically, the year this day is set in. Persia is coming. Xerxes has assembled the largest army the ancient world has ever seen. Conservative estimates put it at 100,000 soldiers. Some ancient sources, probably exaggerating, say 2 million. The actual number doesn't matter as much as this. It is overwhelming. It is unprecedented. Every Greek city except Sparta is debating whether to fight or surrender. Sparta is not debating. The evening comes slowly in Laconia. The light changes over the Taygetos Mountains.
the range that borders Sparta to the west, whose peaks reach 2,400 meters. You can see them from anywhere in the city. They never let you forget where you are. The Sicilian gathers one last time. Someone recites Tyrtaeus. Someone else says nothing. You sleep on your reed mat, in the same room as the men you have known since you were 7 years old. Tomorrow will be the same as today. Until it isn't. Because in a few months a messenger will arrive. The pass at Thermopylae needs to be held. 300 will be chosen, and the selection, historians note, was deliberate. Only men who had already fathered sons were sent. Sparta was not sacrificing its future. It was choosing men who had already secured it. They went anyway. Every single one of them knew what was waiting. They went anyway. We have been telling this story for 2,500 years, and we still can't fully explain why. Maybe that's the point. Maybe some decisions live outside the reach of explanation, in a place that is closer to identity than logic. The Spartans had a word for the quality they valued above all others. Arete, excellence. Not talent, not strength. The relentless pursuit of becoming the best version of what you are every single day, without complaint, without excuse, without end. You wake up before dawn. You train. You eat black broth. You sleep on a reed mat. And you do it again tomorrow. Not because someone is watching, because this is who you decided to be.